Hi guys, my name's Amy and I am doing my presentation on chapter 14, Pathways to Sustainable Development. In this chapter, we get to break down the core issues of sustainable development and we get to look at the timeline that we've been on globally to get us to this point. So to define sustainable development is interesting because most definitions focus on either the sustainability part of it, the environmental part, or the development part, the economical part, but they really leave out the biggest key factor, which is social development. So not considering poverty, inequality, access to healthcare, access to clean water, those types of issues when looking at sustainable development has really cost us. But the whole journey started back in 1972 with the Stockholm, with the Stockholm Conference. At this conference, global leaders started to really push to escalate the issue of sustainability out of just the scientific community into the more political realm. So it made it a political agenda to address this issue. And with that, they created the United Nations Environmental Program. And even though it's kind of been renamed and called different things, throughout history with this issue, it's kind of been that pushing factor that brings these nations together, reevaluate the problem, gather the data, and see what is going on and what can we do about it. So 10 years later, in 1983, the Brundtland Commission wanted to see more action. They were aware of the problem, and now they wanted to figure out, okay, what can we do to start moving in the right direction? And really what they did was gather data and actually started holding public hearings to truly understand what was going on. Now, 1992 is when things really start to take off at the Earth Summit, because we started to realize not only do we have an issue with developed and developing nations agreeing on who really needs to fix this problem, because developing nations think that, this is an industrialized created issue and developed nations created it, they need to fix it, and then we'll kind of get on board, where really the whole world has to be on board. Because like I talked about before, that key aspect of social development, a lot of that is going to be with those developing nations. It's going to be, where we have extreme poverty, where we have a lot of inequality, and addressing those will really pump up that economic pillar that we need. So at the Earth Summit, Tommy Koh kind of did a good job of pointing out that capitalism mindset, how we're coming from that and kind of evolving into something different, where it was first, we want to make money first and then clean up the mess later. And now we need to understand that we want to make money, we want to grow as an economy, but we also want to live in harmony with nature. And living in harmony with nature is not just understanding that, what happens in China affects us here, as in we're all in this together today, but what we do today affects future generations. So we're all in this today, we're all in this tomorrow, we're all in this for a while. And that's why it's so important that we address the problems. And so in that, they also created Agenda 21, which is 21 for the 21st century. And Agenda 21 set very clear goals with a clear plan of action. And they also established the Rio Conventions, which come into play a little bit later. But so it's kind of this domino effect. And, once we get these clear goals, they call it the Millennium Development Goals, we start to see progress, but we didn't see as much progress as we needed. And not having a set timeline and not understanding the true issues. And like I said before, they kind of missed the boat on that social development part. So as they're amping up, trying to make sure the economy stays stable while we're environmentally friendly, we forgot about, the poor. We forgot about, the women in the developing countries who don't maybe have access to healthcare, or the people in these countries who don't have access to food or clean water. And that was holding us back a lot. So the Millennial Development Goals evolved into Sustainable Development Goals that we see now. There's actually 17 of them. And it's interesting, in the chapter, it explains that somebody, I guess, was talking to his mother about, how, 17 goals is a lot, to try to simultaneously rein that in as a lot. And somebody's mom said, 17 is a good number because I wouldn't have believed that they had put that much effort if they would have come out with 10 goals, which is true. It's a very complex issue to try to only address with 10 focus points. But, we are making bigger strides, and we are, the biggest thing from that transition of the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals is that nobody gets left behind. It is all encompassing. The focus is really on building up, these things, or these pillars, to make it an appropriate environment to reach our goals. And I think that's where we're going to see the most progress. Let's see here. So the questions, my 4 questions, are going to be: what are key elements of the North-South debate over sustainable development, and why are these issues so difficult to reconcile? What are some of the tensions between the 3 pillars of sustainable development? Do you think sustainable development policies help address systematic racism? Why or why not? And do you think sustainable development is possible? Should it be a priority? Why or why not? Thanks.